Hi, and welcome to Meeples on Meeples. I'm Brian.
Adam.
Andrew.
And this week we are doing something a little bit different. We are doing a preview for a Kickstarter that is running right now. So at the end of our video, if you are interested in this game, make sure you go to Kickstarter, check out Run Bug Run by 2 Tomatoes. And before we get started, of course, we'd like you to subscribe to us on Facebook, Twitter. We have our own website. We've got YouTube where videos go up weekly. And please check those out.
As Brian mentioned, this week we're doing a preview of a current Kickstarter game, Run Bug Run by 2 Tomatoes. I'm going to go over kind of what the components are and their current stage, what we think of the game, and if you're interested, like you said, go on over to Kickstarter, support the developers, and make this game a reality.
Before you get started, you'll need to do some setup. And as you can see, these are not the finalized components. This is kind of a print and play version that we made ourselves through some files that the developer sent us. So the actual board tiles would be much larger, and the cards would be larger. The artwork may not be completely finalized and things like that.
The character models, of course, will be on pedestals themselves versus the kind of setup we got going here too.
Yeah, so this is just to give you an idea and something we can have a visual for the preview. So to set it up, first you need to choose 10 tiles, and they're all double-sided, and you have more than 10, and you have to basically make a track. Now you can choose to do I guess, rectangular track where you do a lap, or you can have an open track where you just go from end to end, but it should be made up of 10 different tiles. And they're all made so that they line up no matter which way you face them. There are a few that are corner on one side. They have to be a corner piece, but otherwise they're pretty interchangeable. The next thing is you need to separate the cards. And you need to separate them into the surprise cards, which have a question mark on the back. There are leaf cards, which act as your currency into a leaf deck. There's the race cards, which have different special abilities, attacks, bonuses, and things like that that you'll be able to draw from. And then you have these gray cards with the skulls representing wounds, and there's 3 other smaller piles that only certain bugs can use. You'll see that there is a web card if somebody happens to become the spider player, the buzz cards for the fly, and then there's the poison cards for the scorpion. And the different bugs that you can get are represented by the different standees we have printed in front of us. To choose which one, they recommend you roll a die, and the highest roll gets to pick at random, because of course somebody's going to want to pick the 3 bugs to get the stronger attacks or whatever. But they're all face down, and the top roller picks first. Then it moves clockwise, and everybody picks at random to get a bug. And then, of course, you would take the corresponding token. The bugs have a few different things on them. At the top, they have a little lightning bolt with a number next to it. That's a speed boost you get when you roll. If you happen to roll a 6, you move... Well, actually, the finalized version will come with specialty dice. In this version, they say use regular D6. So if you roll the top one, you get to remove 4 spaces plus whatever your lightning bolt is. There's a little sword with a number next to it. That's your attack value, which you add a die roll to that, and you compare it to the defender. And the defender is going to use the 3rd number at the top. There's a number next to a shield. So they'll roll a die and add that number to their defense to see if they can beat the attack. Or tie or beat, I guess. Tie beats an attack. Otherwise, there's one last thing. They each have a special ability at the bottom that they need leaf cards to spend, and Adam will explain that in the rules in just a second. Otherwise, I believe that kind of covers the basic setup.
Yep, the top roller picks cards first, and then the person that rolled the highest number is the first person on the starting grid, too. So you line up...
Oh, that's true. That's how you choose starting order.
Based on how you rolled. So the top person, clockwise, picks the characters, but then you go by the roll number to decide where you end up on the starting grid, actually. Alright, so when you get into the game, you have 2 things you can do on every single turn. You can move and engage in combat. Now moving is Brian, and you can do those in any order. So you can move, then attack, then move, however you want to do it.
Draw a card at the beginning of your turn.
Yes, at the beginning of your turn, though, you always draw a card. So, player 1, before he takes off, is going to draw either a race card or a leaf card. You can pick which deck you draw from. The only difference on drawing cards is if you are the last person at the beginning of every round, you draw 1 card from either the race or leaf pile, but you also get a bonus. You get to draw an extra card just from the leaf pile, so you get a little extra currency to play during your turn.
Whoever's in last place gets 2 cards to kind of make up for the fact that they're losing, hopefully help them catch up.
Exactly. And as I said, on your turn you have the option of moving and combat. Those are the 2 things you can do. You don't have to do both of them. You can just move or just engage in combat, however you want to do it. And you can do them in any order. The movement is determined mostly by dice. You roll the die, and as Brian said, in the final game there'll be specialty dice that'll give you exactly how far you're going to move. But in this game, a D6, a 1 and 2, you move 2 spaces. 3 and 4, you move 3 spaces. 5, you move 4 spaces. And then 6, you move 4 spaces plus the boost icon on the top of your character card, as Brian mentioned. So you roll, you move. Certain race cards will give you bonuses to move further. They'll either let you have another whole roll move, which is a die on the race card, in which case you can play that if you have enough currency and take an extra move, or there's certain ones that will allow you to move a certain specific number of spaces, 1, 2, or 3 more spaces, and you can play those immediately after your move. Combat, as Brian explained a little bit, is based on a roll as well as the attack you have on the top of your character card right next to the sword there.
And you may have drawn extra bonuses with little sword attack cards when you were drawing from the race deck too. So you may get another bonus you can slap down on top of that.
And if you're going to attack, you can attack anybody on the board as long as you have enough leaves. An attack automatically costs 1 leaf, whether they're right next to you or far away. And then if they are not next to you, if they're not adjacent, you have to pay 1 leaf for every space in between you and the person you're attacking. You have enough currency, you lay that out there for the attack. Then both you and the defender can lay out the bonus cards that Brian mentioned, either bonus cards that add to your attack or bonus cards that add to your defense. Once the players have finished laying out their bonus cards, then you roll, you add the bonus cards to the roll, to your attack or defense on the top, and if the attack's higher, the defender takes a wound. If the defender is equal to the attack or higher, nothing happens.
And the reason it stinks to take the wound card, the little skull there, is on your turn, if you have a wound. Well, first off, there's a couple things. Nobody can attack you again if you currently have a wound.
Which is good.
Unless there's a special card that says they get 2 wounds or something. But you only get 1 wound. And the reason they do this is so you can't completely bully and pick on somebody and make them miserable in the game. And it's already punishment enough, because on your turn, if you have a wound, you just draw a card, and then you have to pretty much forfeit your turn to get rid of that wound card.
Yep.
And that is your turn. So you still get a card, but you don't get to do anything else. You don't have the option to attack or move.
All right. And on your attack move, there's a few things besides just the normal attack. There are summons cards that are in the race deck, and those cards have a certain animal usually associated with them, whether it's a bird or
a lizard, things that would
lizard.
eat or attack bugs.
And you can play that instead of a normal attack, and it does extra damage either to one specific person or a whole, possibly the entire group, where you can give everybody a wound instead of just attacking one person. The other specialty type of attack is your special ability. Certain characters have a special ability, like for the fly, for instance, he has the buzz card. It's not an attack. He can play the buzz card if he has enough leaves and give a buzz card to every player at the table, and they move once or 2 spaces less.
They get -2 to their next move, just once, and then they get rid of that card.
But certain characters, like the it would be the spider, for instance, when they attack, well, actually the spider has the web, and that's not an attack either.
The special,
So
bonus file.
If he's within 2 of you, he can throw a web on you, and that keeps you from moving your next turn until you fight the web off.
Which can be very difficult.
Which can be very difficult.
Yeah.
But then you also have the scorpion. Now he actually has a special attack. When he attacks you, if he's right next to you, he can also try to poison you. Now to use a special attack, he has to pay the number of leaves at the bottom. But if he's successful on his attack, you get a wound, plus you get a poison card. And the poison card, basically for every poison card you have 1 less boost if you roll a 6 or the highest number on the die for moving. But those are the types of attacks. You have the normal attack, the summons cards attack, and then the special ability attack that certain characters have. Other than that, the whole point of the game is just to be the first across the finish line. So you go around the track, you have your movements, you have your combat, you try to basically jockey back and forth on the race and try to be the first across the line.
All right, let's talk about strategy. Overall, it's a race game first and foremost. There's a lot of Scrooge in the game,
Yes.
which
Screw thy neighbor. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
That's the name of the game, yeah.
and it does it really well. But in this game, I'd say that's a strong strategy, is use everything in your possibilities to slow somebody down.
Which is kind of surprising, because when you look at the game, it's bugs, kind of a family-friendly feel, and I think you could play it with the family, and it could be a really great, all ages kind of game.
You'd have to pull some punches, though.
But I wasn't
take advantage of all those attacks and like make the kids cry.
I wasn't expecting quite the competitiveness that there is in this game. But I think if you're playing with a bunch of, like our group, a bunch of adults, that's the name of the game. It's,
Right.
Just
Oh, yeah.
attacking each other, playing those cards just right.
One strategy I found in our second race that we did was I was just getting whomped from the start line all the way to about here. But being in last place for the first several turns, I kept getting to draw 2 cards
That
instead of
extra
1.
card.
So I had a full hand. Now, we didn't mention this before, but you can have 5 cards in your hand.
Sure.
But you don't discard down to 5 until the end of your turn. So if I had 5 at the beginning of my turn and I get to draw 2, I have 7. So long as I can play a couple of them, I can keep the other 5 or whatever. I don't have to discard down. So I was able to play a lot of cards, and I went from being way down here and everybody's well past me to winning the game, and pretty handily. I mean, I caught up and passed them. So to be honest, it's almost kind of nice to be in last and to build, or at least if nothing else, try to build up your hand of cards, because they are way more powerful than simple dice roll. You're only moving 2, 3, or 4 spaces usually when you roll dice, and the cards can really boost your attack or your movement. And if somebody gets hurt, they don't move at all on their turn. You're taking their turn away from them.
One kind of interesting strategy, and we talked a little bit about it at the beginning, you have the different decks. One of the decks we didn't talk too much about is that surprise deck, and they're marked on the board here with these question mark spots. It's a little risky, but those cards can do great things for you at the same time.
Very terrible things.
Or very terrible things.
Very terrible.
But we found towards the, in one of, I think it was our second game, Ian, one of our other guys in our group, hit that a few times, and he just got some really good cards out of that. So it's a risk, but playing that surprise card, landing on the question mark, and drawing from that surprise deck may give you just a really great boost. I mean, it can move you ahead, it can do damage to the other players at the table, all of the players instead of just one. So it's a little risky, but I think it might be worth it, especially if you're in last, to maybe play those surprise cards and see what happens.
I've landed on them a few times in which I hadn't too. So.
Yeah, true.
Definitely.
Another thing as far as the strategy goes, you'll see as you look at the board here, there's some spots where there's like a wide open spot in the path, but then there's other places where there's a bottleneck. And you can only move on the spaces that are marked by squares. So one strategy is maybe probably obvious in a racing game, is making sure you kind of play off where you're going to end your guy. The spot you end your turn in makes a big difference, because if you end in a spot and you're not wounded, where there's only one spot to get across, nobody can pass you. They all get bottlenecked behind you. Now, if you're wounded, if somebody hurts you, people can move right through you, and that's not a big deal. But if you're a healthy bug at that point, you're in this spot, you're going to hold everybody else up, and nobody's going to be able to overtake you on that.
We did have, in one of our games, we had a nice bottleneck going right here with 3 characters while Brian ran away with it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it worked great for the since I was past that part. It was nice. So I guess another strategy is, since you get to choose the leaf deck or the race deck at the beginning of your turn. At the beginning of the game, you probably want to build up leaves, since they are the currency, and they are what lets you attack. And then once you have a few leaf cards, maybe then start worrying about getting, okay, what kind of bonus cards can I get from the other deck or whatever. So that would be one strategy to think about.
You also want to not forget about your special ability, because the special ability on most of these characters is very powerful. Like the grasshopper, for instance, can spend, it's 5 leaves, so it's expensive, but he gets to move 7 spaces, which is more than you're going to move pretty much all game. So,
but the downside is then he cannot defend that round during that turn. Round. If somebody else attacks him during that round after he's done that big leap jump, he leaves himself open to attack. But so it's the kind of balance, I think.
With 7 moves, though, you're pretty apt to either pass all the other characters by enough to where you're probably not going to get attacked too much, or it's super awesome because I was the grasshopper and I was way behind. And 7 brought me right back into the pack.
That's true.
Another thing to keep in mind, as we discussed in the rules, is that you can play your turn in any order you want. So don't forget that you can attack first. So if you're at the front of the pack and there's 3 of you grouped up, it may be worth socking somebody and then taking off. Giving them a wound so they're not going to be able to move, and then putting some distance between you and them. So strategizing how you're going to play your turn too is kind of important, I think. Anything else you guys can think of though?
Win. It's a race.
Yeah,
win.
Yeah, win. That's.
Yeah, don't hold back. I mean, unless of course you're playing with your kids or a young audience. Don't hold back, because everybody else is just going to be wailing on you. I think if you do.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about some likes and dislikes. We'll probably kind of avoid the components, because like I said, we had to print this ourselves, and it's not even to scale, much less final high quality components. So we'll avoid touching on that base there.
From what we can tell, if you go over to the Kickstarter, look at the components that are on there. You know, it shows people playing it, things like that.
Yeah.
It looks like it's probably pretty good card stock,
Pretty good, high quality cardboard
things
pieces,
like that. I mean, from those pictures, it looks like it's going to be pretty good.
Sure. I like the theme comes through pretty well, especially with the different insects and the abilities that they have.
Mm-hmm.
And I also kind of like that the abilities were fairly well balanced. I didn't feel like anybody... Because, that leap with the grasshopper that we talked about just a minute ago was fantastic, but it leaves you open to attack, and attacks are very powerful in this game. So, a good balance between what you can and can't do, and if you pull a certain bug, you're not screwed by any means. You would think that the ones who have their own little specialty attack decks would be the most powerful, but 2 races in a row, I did not have one of them. I had the ladybird, and I had the ant, and I won with just regular insects.
The ones with their own cards, the cards are meant more as like a marker than an extra special, because you can, with the fly, you can attack everyone at the table versus one person, so everybody has to have one of those cards. And it's just more of a marker, not a special ability or stronger than the other bugs.
I'm going to agree. I think the theme actually comes across pretty well on this. And another good example of that is those summons attack cards that you can get from the race deck. Is they'll sometimes only affect certain types of bugs, like bugs that can fly, bugs that are ground animals, and they are ground insects. But they actually make sense. Like the one that only affects the ground insects is like a fire type of card, or you have the one that affects the flying bugs. It's like a rain cloud. So it makes sense as far as why it affects those bugs and why they're taking damage versus a certain other bug that doesn't. It's a little thing, but I think the theme actually comes across pretty well from it.
Yeah, no, and a lot of that too is when you get into the theme, it's more than just laying cards and more than just playing your opponent. It's fun to say, oh, you're the grasshopper, or you're the wasp, or the fly. You can kind of get into your character a little bit more, which adds to the game.
I like in racing games when there's a kind of a risk reward to it. Going for those question mark, landing on those spots, I could get something really awesome, or I could end up just screwing myself over.
I don't think you ever got anything awesome, did you?
I usually avoided those spots. I watched what you guys were getting, I'm like, no thanks. But it's also just a risk reward. Like, do I really want to end up like right in front of him and leave myself open to attack because he's going to go next? Things like that.
Yeah.
So, sometimes it's good to push your luck, and sometimes it's good to, do I want to hold back, play conservatively?
I really like I'm a big player interaction fan. I think you can have some race games where you play your turn, you don't really interact with the other people on the board, and it doesn't matter all that much. This, as we've discussed, is a heavy player interaction, because you're always attacking, defending, trying to play off where you're on the board compared to everybody else. It does that really, really well.
It's almost like a little bit Mario Kart with bugs.
That's exactly what I was going to say. This is one of the first board games I played where it felt like kind of the Mario Kart feel. And that's even, again, the person who's last gets that extra card. It's like in Mario Kart where you always get the better attacks when you're the guy at the back
rubber
of the
banding,
pack.
so you're never too far behind. And that's actually another in too many race games, like my favorite Formula D, you can have the runaway leader where you can see that somebody is so far ahead, he's gonna get first place.
Yeah.
In this, because some of those attacks are so great, and because you get so many cards for being last, I've come from very far behind, a couple full tiles behind, and then won the race by 2 tiles by the time it was over. So I don't feel that there's really a big runaway leader problem either. You can come back.
The farthest we had was when we got bottlenecked down here, and Brian won it.
Yeah, we were only maybe 2 spaces back.
By the time I got there, I was maybe 2 turns behind, maybe 6.
And it's only
squares.
2 turns because some of your rolls are low. You might only move 2 spaces.
Right. Yeah.
So it's not much at all, really.
If I could have moved 7 with the grasshopper, it probably would have been right neck and neck. Even though we thought he was running away, he wasn't.
Or somebody gives you the buzz card and you can barely move at all. Andrew.
Right. The buzz card's awesome. What can I say?
But it does the competitive racing, the Mario Kart kind of feel, I think, really well.
It does.
Anything else you guys, as far as the way the game plays, can think about?
The playtime is pretty decent. Even our first playthrough looking at the rulebook was, I believe, right around an hour. So I would say once you know the rules, your playtime is going to be between, again, it depends how much screwage is going on between players, 40 to 60 minutes is probably an expected playtime, which is reasonable.
But it certainly didn't feel like 40 to 60 minutes.
No, it didn't drag down at all.
So
And I think it's a pretty wide audience to be open to. You're probably talking 8, 9 years old and up could probably play the game.
Oh, yeah, I think
maybe
so.
a little bit of help, and maybe even a little bit younger if you have kids that are really experienced in board games. But I think it could be a good family game. Maybe if you pull the punches a little, depending on your family,
Yeah.
I guess. Maybe you're
If you're really cutting with that 8-year-old, there will be tears.
yeah. But I think it's got a wide appeal too, which is a good thing. Anything else you guys can think of though?
Nope, I think we covered it all.
Well, that's our thoughts on Run Bug Run by 2 Tomatoes. If you like what you see here, head on over to the Kickstarter page, give them some support, and make this dream the dream of these designers reality.
And tell them that Meeples on Meeples sent you.